World Series and baseball season will end this week, so it's never too early to talk about free agency. Who are the top free agent fits for the Cleveland Guardians in the top 50, and more on the Guardians coaching carousel on today's episode of Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Guardians, our favorite half hour of the day, because for the next half hour, we're talking Cleveland Guardians baseball, and we do it every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team, your Cleveland Guardians, every single day for the majors, the minors, the draft, and everything in between. I'm one of your two co-hosts, Justin Lada, have been for the last 3 years, and I've spent 18 years covering the Guardians minor league system all the way from Arizona up to Columbus and eventually in Cleveland.
And I'm Jeff Ellis. I've been here since the start of the Locked On MLB network. For that, I was a national writer at Scout and 24/7 focused on prospects and the draft. I want to thank you for making today's episode your first listen today and every day, wherever it is you get podcasts. And a big shout out to all of our everydayers out there. I guess I mentioned it on yesterday's show. I mentioned every day. You are the true hardcore everydayers when you are this deep into the off season, because this is where the everydayers show up, because it's the point between free agency and the end of the season where there's not, we're finding things to talk about. We love talking about it, but not everyone shows up. So thank you to everyone who is showing up during this in-between period.
Yes, absolutely. You're the reason we do this every day. Otherwise, I mean, Jeff and I would be talking baseball anyway.
Yeah.
But it's more fun when we do it with you. So we appreciate you showing up and being a part of the community and the conversation. On today's show, we got a lot of good things to get to. So we'll talk about free agency. We'll talk about Jim Bowden's free agent list. We'll give some caveats on that. But we'll talk about his top 50 and who are fits for Cleveland in the top 50. Surprisingly, Jeff and I think there are some names that make a ton of sense. We'll talk about the impact the lockout may have on that. And we'll start today's show continuing to talk about the Guardians coaching carousel, more fallout from that, and who we think might replace some of the guys here who might leave. Before we jump into all the good stuff today, today's episode of Locked On Guardians made possible because it's brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. All right, so Jeff, you did a good job on Monday covering Craig Albernaz going to the Orioles. That was kind of a late news coming out on Sunday night, so you got to that. I would just say, I think you echoed some of this on Monday. I would say two things about Albernaz leaving. Obviously, Vogt's best friend, you trust him very much. He gives him good perspective. We've always talked about how he's able to be very straight and honest with Vogt, and maybe give him some harsh truths. That's what a best friend should do. And whether that has to do with gameplay, locker room, life, whatever it is, that's an important role. The bench coach is one of the most important roles on the baseball coaching staff. So it is going to be a loss for Vogt, I would say. It makes the return of Carl Willis more important. I think it makes the return of Austin Hedges more important, because now Cleveland's got two open roles, maybe three. I don't know. Junior Betances did step up and take over for Jason Esposito, who I know you mentioned yesterday as well. But that potentially leaves them with 2 or 3 open roles on the staff they'll have to fill. And those will be important roles to fill on a team that saw a lot of impact, at least from Kai Correa. And that doesn't even include who he might take. Listen, I would not be shocked at all if Brad Goldberg goes to Baltimore. That's the big one right there.
I think you and I are both kind of already resigned that it's going to be Goldberg going, at least, if not more.
I mean, maybe. The only thing I would say that goes against it is Albernaz is going to be a first-time manager. Now, he's got more minor league experience as a manager and coach than Vogt did, but it's his first time as a manager, so maybe he'll try to find somebody who has more experience than Goldberg.
I think here's the thing. We know, look around baseball, talked about on yesterday's show, this is where you want to come to get your pitching coaches, is from Cleveland. So He gets to take a guy he knows from an org that he just got to watch this guy. And you and I know he's a rising star. I'm sure someone who spends all their time with him knows he's a rising star. You're not going to find a better pitching coach. Let's be real honest. Like, in both your and my opinion, if you're going to start with a young pitching coach, the best one to get right now is Brad Goldberg. So it stinks. It absolutely stinks. It's the downside to Willis leaving, is that means that now you're right. To him staying is I'm betting on Goldberg, and I do wonder about JT McGuire as well. They like you said. I think Betances is here to stay, as we talked about in the season. Well respected, everything else. They got 2 open spots. I expect there to be more.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all. That doesn't even include, Matt Foreman, who's a finalist for the Rockies job, and this is why, like, I don't understand why Matt Foreman would take the Rockies job, other than the fact there's only 30 of these, and he's kind of blocked going up here by James Harris and some other guys that are above him now in the AGM role. So I could see Foreman leaving because he's just not going to move up above Chernoff and
stability.
Yes, the stability here is why he's not going to move up. So he might leave.
Well, no,
in Colorado.
To do the thing everyone loves and interrupt you. Colorado has been poorly run because of its stability. Like that's the one nice thing. If you go to Colorado, everyone has gotten a long run. So like, as opposed to going to a team where you might not, like if you go to Colorado, you're guaranteed 5 to 7 years. You're not guaranteed that most places. Dick Momfret does not knee jerk. So I will say you go to Colorado, they all know you stink. You're going to get a nice long runway to fix and turn around and make it your team. I mean, obviously I'm a nobody, but like I would jump at the Colorado job if I was in Matt Foreman's shoes or even in my own shoes, because you're going to have some pieces to build around and you have a lot of time to develop, so much so that the good pieces there now, you might even flip for more pieces because you're going to get a long runway with that org.
Yeah, that's not a bad point. You're right. I don't know. My thing with Goldberg, obviously you and I know like he's mentioned, he's a rising star. Obviously he just can't get promoted here anymore. Like the only way he could go up in Cleveland is if he takes over Willis's role, and Willis is going to have that role, as you mentioned on Monday, as long as he wants it. So, and he's just year to year at this point, like Terry Francona was at one point. So it's hard to say. Like Brad's not going to know, but I mean, Brad might also consider like maybe he has more to learn, and maybe Craig wants somebody who has previous experience with major league experience as a head pitching coach, a main pitching coach. But like you said, it's always good to take rising stars. You want to pluck guys before somebody else plucks them, which is why Brad Goldberg has been promoted as quickly as he has been here, because Cleveland, wants to keep promoting him before anybody else can pick him off, but they might be running out of chances. And I'm with you on JT McGuire. We've heard a lot about him. I wouldn't be surprised to see him go with Craig as well. There's a couple names out there too, like Anton Richardson was a guy that was mentioned. The Mets really wanted him back, and he decided not to re-up with them. He's been with them for a little bit now. He has some ties to Albernaz and Vogt, so he was in San Francisco with Albernaz, and I think he might have crossed over with Vogt late in his career too. So Richardson's one of those guys that's out there that could be a fit for Cleveland, but he also could be a fit for Albernaz in Baltimore too. I was just thinking of different guys that come up. Like there's guys in the minor league system that I'm aware of, like, John McDonald. Would that be a guy that is ready to take over Kai Correa's role? He's been with the Guardians for like, I forget how many years now, as their minor league infield coordinator. And he works all the infielders and is a fantastic resource and really fun to talk to too. Very nice guy, I will say, a departure from some other people. So he might be a good fit if the organization wants some continuity and brings somebody along that they know. I think you're right. I think there'll be like an external hire and an internal hire. I think they'll promote someone from within, which could be McDonald. Maybe there's Greg DeCenso, who's in AAA, and maybe there's like an outside guy that Vogt
Mike
trusts.
Sauerball. He's looking for a job, right? Former manager.
He was with the Mets. Did the Mets not bring him back?
No, he was let go. He was let go by the Mets this year. He was their third base coach.
I have a feeling he's not going to want to come back to Cleveland.
No, I don't think he wants to come back either. Yes, he was upset, but he is a guy who was did a lot. Like he got a lot of credit. I will say this: if bridges can be mended, and he's the guy who got a lot of credit for Brett Batty's improvement. And with them losing Kai Correa, they do need someone to do. If you don't go with McDonald, it's just another name to throw out there.
Yeah, there's interesting stuff out there on that. We'll cover that throughout the offseason. I'm sure we'll talk more about guys who could be candidates for different roles. And I'm sure since the World Series wraps up no later than Saturday this week, we'll hear lots of talk about it. All right, we're past the coaching stuff. We'll continue to follow what comes with that, what news comes in between now and then. But let's talk free agency. Jim Bowden put out his top 50 free agent list, and surprisingly, there were guys he thought were fits for Cleveland, and surprisingly, there were guys that were, I think, affordable that he didn't name to Cleveland that Jeff and I will touch on coming up on the rest of today's Locked On Guardians. The NFL season is back, and there's nothing better than being in person at a stadium and arena, cheering on your favorite team, surrounded by all other kinds of fans, no matter who that team is. Let's be honest, getting tickets, though, that is the frustrating part. You're going on to login screens, you're logging into apps, there's long queues, and the prices jump at checkout, and that's very frustrating. That's why I use Game Time, because it's the app that gives advantage back to fans like you and I. Game Time is fast, it's easy, and it's back with a Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time at the best price, plus all fees are included. So the price you see on the app is the price you're paying at checkout. I've used it numerous times for Cavs tickets. I'm using it right now to check on Jonas Brothers concert tickets for my wife. We'll wait till the last second because we know prices for that concert, as any event, will go down closer to when it starts. So we'll be checking the Game Time app. We'll be going to that concert thanks to Game Time. So download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONMLB. You're going to get $20 off your first purchase. The terms apply. But again, that's code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Thanks for being with us on today's episode of Locked On Guardians. Lots of fun stuff to get into. If you like what you're hearing, and if you're this far in the episode, I would assume you do. If you haven't already, hit the bell on YouTube to get notified of any video when it goes live, whether it's a regular episode, breaking news videos like the Craig Albernaz situation, go into the Orioles, bonus episodes, the MLB Squad show. You can get all that on YouTube as well. And all of your audio platforms, you can auto-download so you never miss an episode when you're walking your dog, going for your morning walk, doing the dishes, cooking. I listen to a lot of podcasts when I cook just to fill the time. So we're happy to be with you wherever you go and chatting about baseball. All right, I know some people, Jeff, are going to scoff and say free agency and some of these names. They're going to be like, all right, who cares? Because Cleveland's not going to sign any big name free agents. And maybe that's true.
They spent $40 million last year in free agency. I'm just going to point that out again.
Exactly. They spent $40 million last year in free agency. And they kind of did the what's the right way to phrase this? It was
a salad bar approach, a little bit here. So here's the thing. I was thinking about this today. Essentially, the Cleveland Guardians' approach to free agency is like everyone's college relationship. They think they can fix them. That's everyone they sign. They know there's a glaring issue and like, oh, I can fix that. And unfortunately, it just didn't work out for most of the players a year ago.
I was going to say spray and pray, but that's probably not the right way to phrase that. So that's exactly, it is what they did. No matter how you want to phrase, that's what they did last season. But Jim Bowden, and we'll put a caveat, Jim Bowden, his stuff is always kind of weird. His sourcing is kind of weird, and he just doesn't have the nice background.
A front office he was in charge of defrauded Latin American players of money, and he kind of was. He didn't get indicted because he snitched on people, so that's always been a big black cloud. And then the time he deleted his Twitter account after it was clear he was stealing information. So there's a lot of negatives, but the one positive, and I said this last offseason, is he provides content. And right now, a lot of people don't want to provide content. He provided content, and because he is who he is, we can say some of this is just dumb and ridiculous, and we're going to dive into that. And we're going to say some of it is interesting, and we'll say some of it's good. Like, just like we know we have people who don't love us out there. We're not necessarily the biggest Bowden heads, but I appreciate and I'm thankful that he's out there writing, because a lot of baseball people aren't, or they're writing about very, team niche things. So it's nice to see something that's more wide focused.
So his number 10 free agent is Cody Bellinger, and he mentions Cleveland is a great fit. And on paper, maybe they are, but he also has it going for 6 years, $168 million. So I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on this, right? This is not Cody Bellinger is not going to be a Cleveland Guardian. It's not going to happen.
No, it's just weird that best fit. I mean, it's just like, I guess because Cleveland needs an outfielder and he plays outfield. Moving on.
Yeah. I mean, on paper it makes sense, but it's not going to be realistic.
No.
His next free agent is number 12, and that's Munetaka Murakami, who was a left-handed hitting first baseman, third baseman from Japan, the Nippon Professional Baseball League. He also mentions Cleveland as a best team fit. This one's a little odd. The contract prediction is 6 years, 160, so you can automatically cross that off for Cleveland. Number 2, I don't think he fits for Cleveland anyway. He's a first baseman, third baseman who strikes out a ton. He hits left-handed. This is not a guy that even makes sense to me, money or fit.
So on top of that, you'd have to, if he got the 160, they'd have to pay another $24 million as a posting fee to his team. He has dealt with health issues. And then I got to throw out these contact numbers in Japan. A 63% contact rate in Japan. That's in Japan is an area like if you remember a year ago, there was a lot of talk with the pitcher who went to Baltimore, whose name I would butcher, like where people are like, yeah, it's like, hey, his strikeout rate isn't that good, but hey, it's fine because guys don't strike out in Japan. He struck out, and on top of that, he had a 49% swing and miss rate on breaking balls. So he couldn't hit a breaking ball in Japan. He has health issues. He's probably a first base. Like he is the guy. I wanted Seiya Suzuki badly. That's the guy when he came over. I was like, this guy is the real deal. The other side of it was when the Red Sox signed Yoshida. I was like, this is a terrible deal. It was my best video of that offseason back when I was doing a solo episode. Like this guy, I think is going to be, and maybe I'll be wrong. Listen, I was wrong on what Ohtani became. I can very easily be wrong here, but this is like the guy I would say is my number one avoid candidate in the entire offseason.
Yeah, you just don't want a guy in Japan who strikes out this much. Like it's very rare for guys to strike out over there. So the fact that he's striking out this much and has, like you said, has health issues, and he's only a first baseman, third baseman, and he hits left-handed, it just doesn't seem like a fit for Cleveland. So and the money that Jim Bowden even thinks that he'll go for doesn't make sense anyway. So this is just more of a paper fit. And I don't think it even works there. 16 on his list is Shane Bieber. He's got Shane Bieber getting 3 years, $75 million with a player opt-out after each year. His market's going to be interesting this offseason because he didn't have the best return to the majors, which isn't a shock. Like he was good, but he also had some ups and downs. I don't know what's going to happen from this offseason, but I don't think a reunion makes sense here because Cleveland, the reason they got to the playoffs was because of their pitching in September. And I know you can never have enough depth, but this team doesn't have the financial flexibility. And they do have some this offseason if they want to use it, depending on how things shake out. I don't think it's worthwhile for them to spend any kind of money on starting pitching.
It's a weak starting pitching group on top of that in free agency, so it's probably going to cost you a little bit more in general. So, yeah, I agree.
Yeah. All right. So we'll cross Shane Bieber off the list. The next one he's got is after Shane Bieber is an interesting one. He's got Josh Naylor as the fit for the Guardians at 4 years, $90 million. The reason the Guardians traded Josh Naylor in the first place is because they didn't want to pay Josh Naylor that kind of contract. And since they traded him, I don't think things have gotten any less frosty between the two. So I would say that not only does Josh Naylor don't want to come back to Cleveland, I don't think Cleveland wants him back for the money either. So that doesn't make sense to me either.
Yeah, when he left, they were kind of very clear in the meeting. They were not afraid to be like, we didn't think he was going to age well, basically. Like you could read between the lines and say they had no interest. And when he asked them about long-term contracts, it's come out since that they pretty much declined. That there was no
talk.
Yeah, so you can just move on.
Yeah. 18 is another first baseman. It's Kazuma Okamoto from the Yomiuri Giants, the Nippon Professional Baseball League. He's got this one at 4 years, $90 million. Again, this is a paper fit, not a actual fit for Cleveland because they're not paying a 29-year-old first baseman that kind of money. I know they did it with Edwin Encarnacion in the past, but it's just they're not. It doesn't make sense. I don't think this team needs a corner infielder either. Like they need outfield help, and Okamoto is not really an outfielder. I know he's a better hitter than Murakami, but this is not a guy that really makes sense for their roster fit right now. Plus, he's 29. You want to be paying a guy like this so he's 35? I don't think that makes sense, and the money doesn't make sense either.
Yeah, he's played 164 games in the outfield over 5 seasons as opposed to 835 at third and 519 at first. I do like him as a hitter. I like him more than Murakami. He doesn't have quite the power ceiling, but he's had a lot of years of 30, even had a 40 home run. Another guy who wasn't fully healthy this year. You know, in the grand game of musical chairs, if it ends up where he is one of those guys where maybe he's left standing, but again, the problem is the posting fee. Over 50 million, you got to pay 15% of that contract back. So 90 times 15. Oh, don't make me do this. Wouldn't it be like an additional 10 million maybe?
Don't ask me. I'm not doing that math on the air. I'm not going to make myself look stupid again. I just don't see the money matching up, and I don't see the positional fit either. And we move on to Cedric Mullins, who's the last free agent on his list at number 50. He's got Guardians as a fit for him, and I don't know if I see this as a fit, but it's 1 year, $8 million. Mullins has been declining for quite some time now. He did have a nice, decent year in 2024, but he had one of the worst years of his career this year at 1.3 WAR, and he had 216. Doesn't strike out, which is good, and he does walk. And I believe he's still not a bad defender. in center field. Yeah, he's 4 outs above average in 2025, but I just don't see that being a fit for them as far as being left-handed. And I mean, on a 1-year deal at $8 million, I wouldn't scoff at it and say no, but he wouldn't be my first option. We'll see why Cedric Mullins would not necessarily be the worst fit in the world for the Guardians in 2026, despite the fact that he's been on the decline for quite a while. We'll talk about more free agent fits on Jim Bowden's list that Jeff and I do like that he didn't mention. And if we have time, we'll throw in talk about the lockout and how that impacts free agency as well. Coming up on the rest of today's Locked On Guardians. All right, thanks for making Locked On Guardians again your first listen to every Music podcast. Shout out, as Jeff always says, to our insider community. You guys are what makes the show go around and who we love talking to the most, and our everydayers. So if you want to be part of that community, go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnGuardians to get alerted of breaking news when guys like Craig Albernaz leave for new jobs, when free agents come in, and the other breaking news, monthly insider chats, mailbags, and more all over there. Plus, we got some news coming at the end of the year on Insider Program and how much more you can get out of it in the coming months as well. All right, Jeff, I was saying that I think that Cedric Mullins not necessarily the best fit for Cleveland. He's also not the worst fit for Cleveland because he hit 17 home runs last year, even as a 1.3 WAR. Still not a bad defender. Again, coming off one of his worst years of his career, I would say. I'm not saying he's a great fit for them. I'm not saying he's a bad fit for them. It's just not the first guy I'd be jumping at. But the one thing, Jeff, he would do is hit home runs. The last time the Guardians had an outfielder that hit 17 home runs or more as an outfielder was 2014. Michael Brantley hit 18. They have not had an outfielder hit 17 home runs in a season since 2014 as an outfielder. So Cedric Mullins has accomplished that in a lot of seasons, actually. 18 the year before, 15 in 2023, and 16 in 2022. And he'll never repeat his 2021 season. But there are worse fits, but there are certainly better fits.
He's probably a classic buy low. Maybe didn't play well in his free agent year. Good range, good base runner, a little bit of pop. Like you said, you can do worse, but I think you could also do better.
Yeah. So there are some guys on Jim Bowden's list that he didn't mention for Cleveland that you and I definitely both liked. You've got one in particular you've had your eye on. I will say this. I'll let you talk about him, but I was most surprised by the fact that he's got Trent Grisham on the list at number 24 out of his 50 at 2 years, $30 million. Trent Grisham is coming off a career year, so I understand the skepticism that he may not repeat it, but he had 34 home runs, and it wasn't like he was doing it all in Yankee Stadium. I mean, he hit 21. I'm sorry, he hit 21 of those home runs on the road. Did I get that right? Did he hit that many home runs on the road? Yeah, he had 21 home runs away from there out of his 34. So he was doing a lot of damage outside of Yankee Stadium. Actually, he only had a 195 average in Yankee Stadium with 13 home runs. So on the road, his WRC plus was 151. It was only 104 in Yankee Stadium, despite the fact the Yankee Stadium is kind of built for hitters like him. So I would be all over that contract money-wise for him. If he really is only going to get 2 years, $30 million, I would be more than willing to put that up for Trent Grisham.
Yeah, he's interesting from the perspective of, like, if you don't count 2020, because it's just a hard year to take anything from it. He only had 1 year above league average. That was 2021 until this year where he just exploded. And before you're like, well, maybe he got too lucky and things like that. Well, his barrel rate was up. He really changed his launch angle. And the change in his launch angle allowed him to get into the sweet spot more. There looks like there were some significant swing changes that were part of it. So it's not just, hey, he had a high BABIP and he ran into some things. He actually has what looks like some genuine changes to his swing as a guy who, I'm not sure when he's turning 29. I believe he's 28, will be 29, maybe I think it's next week, actually. So, he's also in that time where, like, his age 28 season, he did some swing changes. He could be a player who's taken off a bit.
Yeah, I'd be really interested. Plus, he's a good defender he's not a good defender in the outfield. At least
he had been historically until this year.
Yeah, he wasn't this year, which is odd. Doesn't have a great arm, so I'll be curious to see how Cleveland values him. But No, he ended up being a good fit for New York this past year. I'd be very interested in him. I was surprised. I picked him out mostly because of the contract prediction for him. I think he makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, I think the other fun outfielder is, I think 48 on the list, is Mike Yastrzemski. And, Yastrzemski is a guy who isn't the most exciting. I'll be the first, and he's 35 years old, so he's older. And I just thought it was kind of funny on his that they only listed Kansas City as a fit because he had a great run with Kansas City at the end there. I do wonder with him if this is his first chance to get paid because he was a late major leaguer. He's going to look to, and not that he's going to get a ton of money, but 1 year, $6 million. I would do that tomorrow because he's 5-6 straight years above league average production. Solid defender. His range is shrinking a little, but he still has a huge arm. So, there's a lot of things you can look to, and I'm willing to settle for, solid to average production because, I love the idea of Valera. I love the idea of DeLauder. You can't count on those guys until they show that they can show up. Like, that's the thing. You need to have some other options. So you're not running back to guys like Martinez and players like that. If there's worse things than having guys battle for spots in the spring and having some depth. So I'd rather get a guy who has been really consistent. Give me the guy, for a year ago at this time, we talked Carlos Santana, and I was more for it than you were. And Santana wasn't consistent, right? Like, he had the great year and then kind of a solid year and then some bad years. It wasn't 5-6 straight years. So I liked Yastrzemski. And then I got to be honest, I liked pretty much all of his late relievers. Like, sign me up for all of them.
Yeah, all the relievers in that list were fantastic as far as what could be a fit for Cleveland. It's not a great free agent class, so I don't know if that's going to spike the prices and make it harder, or if it means that teams will sort of lowball them, a year ahead of a lockout. Makes it interesting from a collusion aspect, and I don't know, that's how it's going to go. I want to point out Yastrzemski, too, also the same vein as Cedric Mullins. Like, he hit 17 home runs last year. I'm sorry, he hit 18 home runs last year. He had 17 home runs. 17 home runs a year ago. So
in
just
San
like
Francisco
Mullins,
for most of the year. So anywhere else,
yeah,
might be more.
And a couple things that he does really well that fit for Cleveland. He doesn't chase. He does whiff a little bit, but he walks. He's squaring the ball up. He doesn't have great range, but he's got a great arm. And if you go look at his Savant page, the pulled fly ball rate for him last year, 25%, which is about 9% above league average. He has always excelled at pulling the ball in the air. So, you're going to get an extra option year on Valera. I wouldn't be opposed to, I know Valera may not like it, but I wouldn't be opposed to making him battle, like you said. And if things don't work out with Yastrzemski and Valera's kicking butt in AAA, you bring him back. I mean, if you want to win next year and you want to, like you said, raise the bar a little bit, that's the way to do it. The relievers make a ton of sense. Like, I can't believe this is a shocking one to me. And I obviously Jim Bowden's going to have better connections than we do, even if we think some of the information sometimes is goofy. Devin Williams on his list, he only thinks that Williams is going to get 1 year. And what was he going to get? 1 year, $10 million.
Same for Ryan Helsley.
Him and Ryan Helsley. Anybody who thinks that Devin Williams had a bad year, now on the surface, his ERA was poor. It was 4.79. His FIP was 2.68, which is actually is a bad year for him because previously his FIPs were 2.06, 2.01, 2.66. He's been much better than this in his career. The reason Devin Williams had such a bad year is because his strand rate, his left on base rate, which is hitters that he doesn't allow to cross that are left on base, down to 55%. His career average is 75%. So he had a very bad year in terms of strand rate. That's going to normalize out. Like, his career rate is 20 points higher. That's going to come back. So if you're getting Devin Williams on 1 year, $10 million, I would be shocked, and I would laugh at any front office. I don't think anyone's going to pay him that little. I think he's going to get a lot more. His walk rate was one of the lowest of his career, too, by the way. He had consistently had a 12% walk rate up until this year. It was under 10%, which is still not great, but yeah, I can't imagine any front office looks at this and says, he had a down year, we're not going to give as much money. Like, no, he had a great year. The surface numbers didn't match, but if you can get him for that kind of, pay, sign me up for that.
Yeah, I know. And it's some contradictory stuff because, like, during, I don't know, a month ago, like, Jeff Passan was saying how Luke Weaver is going to get paid in free agency, and now he's got, and Bowden's got Weaver at 2 years, 20 million, so 10 million a year. It's another guy. I'm like, yeah, I know he can be home run prone, and that's the thing. It's a surprisingly decent relief market. Like Kyle Finnegan was nails for the Tigers down the stretch. There's and that's not even getting into the guys like Suarez and Diaz who will be at the top of the market that Cleveland's not hunting in that range. But there'll be some names, and I think this is an area where Cleveland can come in. Bring Drew Pomeranz home. Like there's some interesting names who could be choices. There's some depth. Brad Keller had a great year for the Cubs. They'll probably try to bring him back in. But there's a lot of really interesting relief arms, and that's where I don't want a Paul Sewald. Give me someone who maybe costs 10 to 12, but is a little bit better. One other guy that kind of intrigues me, I didn't talk with you about Luis Arraez, just because here's the thing. Looking at his, I know he doesn't have a position, this and that. He was for his career really good about kind of more of a going to center field, and most of his power is to right, but he went opposite field like 8% higher than any season of his career. Like his swing must have been out of whack. He had a dramatic change to where he was hitting the ball, and that could be a part of the reason why the numbers just weren't quite as good. So there's a chance he's, again, a guy who's only 28, so that might be someone you can fix, as I talked about earlier.
Yeah, that would be a goofy 1-2-3. Quan, Arraez, and Jose Ramirez. Could you imagine that 1-2-3? Like,
it'd be annoying for the pitchers.
It would be annoying. It'd be a good thing. A lot of contact, but at least Quan has a little bit of shocking pop. Luis Arraez has no power, and then you got Jose. But you maybe have a chance to wear pitchers out, which at least is a good strategy if you're not going to be top 10 in home runs. You got to grind out at bats and do the Garrick wedge. As far as the lockout too, I know we got to jump out of here real quickly, but as far as the lockout, we'll talk about this more in depth later. The Guardians, again, we talked about how their projected payroll is pretty low for this year. So I don't know how that's going to impact the free agent market, but I can say this. I think a lot of teams don't want to be stuck with contracts next year and from free agency if there's going to be a lockout. Like, I don't think they want to have money like that in the books and not have any revenue coming in. There's a lot of teams like that. So that either means that all the players that are available are going to go to the Yankees and the Dodgers and whoever else, or it's going to be a depressed market, and maybe that falls into Cleveland's range and they can get guys on 1-year deals, because that'd be perfect for them for a lot of reasons, what we'll get into on a later show. But on tomorrow's show, we'll do Stock Watch Wednesday. We'll talk about the prospects in the Guardian system who raised their value the most in 2025, whether that's internally, trade value, or their ability to contribute in 2026.
Thank you all for joining. Remember to rate and review, download daily. It helps. Thank you all, and go Guardians, guys.